Wasabi guys, welcome back to another Magic Market Watch video. As always, if you appreciate these, please subscribe to the channel. It means a lot. We are getting closer and closer to 40,000 subscribers. It's a big milestone. The channel is almost twice where it was at this time last year. So let's talk about some of the gainers of this week. And I feel like we'll be talking even more about the reprints from Double Masters 2022 next week and the following week. This week, there still isn't really that much to talk about in terms of lost value. So let's start it off here with a gainer. Mnemonic Deluge, again from last week, made some progress getting close to $5. This week it dipped a little bit, but then it's right back up above $5. So I like where this card's going. It has a lot of potential, and I'll continue to keep an eye on it. We have a card that we haven't seen before in the Market Watch, Argivian Find. 1 mana, white instant, return target artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. This is from Weatherlight. Not a reserve list card, and that's usually something that comes up whenever we talk about older sets like Weatherlight. But for it to go up from, $1 or $2 to close to 10 is definitely something worth talking about. And the card itself isn't bad, it's just we have a lot of ways of doing the same thing on creature ETB, creature death triggers that are a lot easier to abuse. And sometimes you get a price increase like this because it has some sideboard compatibility with Legacy. I have no clue why it's going up, just that it is. It does happen when you get some cards like these that have never been reprinted, and Weatherlight doesn't have a massive premium, but it is an older set that, again, hasn't been printed as often as some newer ones. Then we have Rust Elemental. We've seen a lot of cards this year, especially going back to the Beamtown Bullies, that are going up because of the ability to put them into play under your opponent's control. Rust Elemental can punish artifact decks, obviously, and if they can't sacrifice any of their artifacts, they have to tap it and they lose 4 life. Pretty modest, still $2 in the market value, which is a lot compared to the, sub 50-cent value it's had for a long time. Then we have Slip Out the Back. This is either standard or Pioneer, which is kind of cool that they're bringing back phasing, and at 1 mana at instant speed, I think it's pretty good value. Again, its increase is probably due to its playability in those 2 formats I mentioned. And then we talk about a loser here, Sevinne's Reclamation. This is because of the Battle for Baldur's Gate reprint, and you could see it's been going down. It's basically forming a mountain. I've talked about this card being incredibly underrated going back to Commander 2019, because if you played something like Sun Titan, you didn't have to wait to get to 6 mana to get pretty much the same thing out of Sevinne's Reclamation. And it has flashback, so it's reusable. Pretty solid card all around, but now it's getting down under 5, which is a bit of a disappointment. If you're a fan of Commander cards, you know that if they go some time without being reprinted, they have a chance to go on a pretty significant run. And then we have another loser here to discuss. It is Mishra's Workshop. We'll get to Double Masters cards in a second, but this one is part of a trend that we've seen. It's not necessarily every reserve list card, but it's the most expensive ones that don't really see play. Meaning, if people play them, it's a very niche subgroup, things like Vintage, and even then people are likely playing that online. They're not actually paying this kind of money for the physical card. So if it's something that you were going to buy to put in a case and never touch again, especially in this economy, people are a lot less willing to do that. So you're seeing things like Mishra's Workshop, Bazaar Baghdad, big money cards, very iconic, some of the most iconic cards you're ever going to see in this game, see price drops by 40-50%, which is a large percent for a card of this value. I think this is exactly what people needed if they wanted to get into collecting cards. It's not going to reflect on every single reserve list card, as I mentioned, but the ones that you always looked at, like Mishra's Workshop and Bazaar Baghdad, and thought to yourself, wow, I'm never going to be able to afford that. A market value of $1,200 when you have a lot of listing prices at $3,000 and above is very appealing. If you can get it at that market value of $1,200, it's going to encourage other sellers to start listing it lower. Now let's talk about Double Masters 2022. It's the elephant in the room. I could go over the value for the past week and a half that the set's been released, and what you would see for most of these in the top 15 is that it's a straight horizontal line, which is good. It shows stability, at least in the reprint. While they might be starting out at a much lower price than the original prints, the supply doesn't seem to be that ridiculous to where everyone's opening the set. Sellers just have a surplus of all these big rares. That being said, the ultimate chase card is Imperial Seal. The market value is $157. If you've been following this channel, if you've been following this Market Watch series, I did predict that it would go under $200 and settle. I didn't quite believe that it would be this fast after release, but my original thesis is still proven true. And that was the speculation going into Portal 3 Kingdoms reprints. You'll still find that a lot of people overestimate the value for those cards if they were to just be reprinted. Oh, you're talking $300, $400, $500 at the minimum. No, All the previous versions for Imperial Seal had massive premiums, meaning that it was a lot harder to find them because of a specific printing. Once it got a print in a set like a Master set, or maybe even a Core set if they're daring enough to do that, you know the value was going to tank, because it was the same thing as Imperial Recruiter. All it took was a couple reprints in a Master set where it was much easier to obtain, and what used to be a way more expensive creature suddenly is now under $10. So if you were to look at all the reprints and look at the charts, again, for the most part, it is a horizontal line, all of them showing good stability for the most part, with the exception of Imperial Seal. While the vertical action here isn't quite as pronounced because of the y-axis being so short, it went from well over 350 in early listings to now where I thought it would be under 200. That's a significant drop. This is supposed to be the chase card for the set, so if you were going into this week 1 thinking, if I just get an Imperial Seal, I've pretty much made my money back, that might not be the case within the month. So just be careful. We look at the previous printing here, the Judge promo, and you can see there's a bit of a dip, but it's not like it hasn't dipped before. I think it's overall going to trend upward because the Judge promos have that premium. But before Double Masters 2022, this was the easiest one to find, and it was still getting above $600. Usually what happens with original prints, if we look at the Portal 3 Kingdoms version, again, the y-axis is horrible for this chart, so I apologize for that. Imperial Seal is no cheaper than it was before the reprint announcement. And what's funny is that the market value for this card is even higher than what we just saw with Mishra's Workshop. So that goes to show, if you look at the reprint value with Double Masters 2022, the same card, this set specifically, Portal 3 Kingdoms, is insane with its premium. So next time we see this happen for a Master set, and you get a lot of people saying, oh, it might be $500 or $600, always believe that it can go lower because it most certainly will. Again, we're not going to be looking at every chart for the reprints just yet because we need, I would say, about a month to get good data on those. But what we can do is look at the charts for the original prints, such as with another chase card here, Renin 6, I would say the second biggest chase card of the set, and it did dip, but it's also coming right back up. So it's clearly a desired card, people want it for their decks. It's not just something that was more so hard to find like Imperial Seal. A lot of people play this card in other formats. Another big card, this is the third chase card, not the original print, but the most recent reprint before this reprint. In Modern Masters 2017, it is dipping a bit, but it's not collapsing. It doesn't seem like it's going to be the kind of card that's going to dip far below 50. And that's what happens when you have good cards that see play in other formats as well. They tend to hold their value, and Dockside Extortionist was another big card. A lot of people talked about this being a huge reprint. You see something very similar to Renin 6. A lot of people want this. It's a very desirable competitive card. Got to 50, bounced right back up. That's what we call in stocks a support level. It's not that it can't ever go below that line, but it has to show strength, return to it, and then recover. So you can see almost like a plateau action there between the announcement of the reprint and where it is right now. Resistance would be the exact opposite, where it tries to get above a certain level, but it can't. So it ends up looking more horizontal. But I think if you were worried about the value for these cards tanking, we're already almost 2 weeks into the release of this set, and Double Masters 2022 seems to be good for most of the cards. Again, Imperial Seal, if you were hedging your bets on that, learn from that next time whenever they decide to reprint a really old card with a massive premium. So anyway, that's going to do it for this week's Magic Market Watch. We're going to have even more to talk about next week with more information, more data on those charts. I have a feeling that we're going to see some price changes. We might even see some price increases for those Double Masters reprints. I wouldn't be too surprised. We looked at Renin 6, we looked at Dockside Extortionist. Sometimes that happens with a lot of supply. If the buyers are hungry enough, it's not going to hurt the card's long-term value. It will just be known as a little dip in an overall upward trend. This is Commander Void. I will see you all next time.